We all know that consuming high amounts of sugar or added sugars is really bad for us. But let's see how bad it actually is. So number one is sugar causes weight gain. Now this one is really obvious because sugar actually increases your insulin resistance. It increases your fat storage rather than increasing your fat burning process. Sugars, especially fructose, has recently been shown to decrease the production and decrease the activity of leptin. If you have a lot of fructose in your diet, it will actually lead to much more fat storage and actually increase your insulin resistance. In about 1940s, in the American diet, there was a thing that was added that actually worsened the obesity epidemic, and it was high fructose corn syrup. Now, high fructose corn syrup is about 55% fructose and about 45% glucose. Now, this high amount of fructose actually worsened the insulin resistance in the Americans, and now 1 in 3 Americans have diabetes, and about half have pre-diabetes or will have diabetes sometimes after 2050. Now, it's really sad because if you have insulin resistance, it actually puts lots of weight on your viscera and on your belly. That is linked to many chronic illnesses. Much of the weight gain that comes from consuming sugar actually comes from consuming sugary drinks. For example, if you have a 500 ml bottle of juice or 500 ml bottle of soda, it contains about 50 or 55 grams, sometimes even 60 grams of added sugar. It's really sad how much sugar actually is in there. And if someone is on a 2000 calorie diet, now if you consume 500 ml of soda, more than 12% of your calories are coming from added sugars. And that would increase your chances of chronic illnesses by about 20 to 30%. And children who drank a lot of soda actually were found out to have a lot greater chances of developing atherosclerosis and arteriosclerosis later in their life. Number two is sugar actually increases your risk of heart disease. Because sugar consumption increases your VLDL levels or very low density lipoprotein levels and your levels of triglycerides. Triglycerides are further notorious to be causing plaques together with LDL and LDLC in your blood. Now, if you consume a lot of sugar, you have a lot of triglycerides in your blood. Your blood is actually a lot more thicker than a person who does not consume a lot of sugar. And that causes heart diseases, especially myocardial infarction and strokes. If you want to reduce your chances of myocardial infarction and many other vascular diseases, you should try consuming more fiber and becoming more active. Also, try consuming less sugar. People who consume about 17 to 21% of calories from added sugar have a 40% greater risk of dying from heart disease than people who do not consume more than 8% of their calories from added sugars. So if you cut down your added sugars overall, you would actually be cutting down your risk of heart disease, stroke, and other vascular injuries. Consuming too much sugar also leads to higher insulin release, and a higher insulin release will, after all, cause insulin resistance. Now, people who have greater circulating insulin also have greater sodium retention, greater water retention, and a greater excretion of potassium from their body. This would actually lead to hypertension and, after all, putting greater stress on your heart. Number three, high sugar intake causes acne. Now, acne is a disease mostly that happens in teenagers, and they found out that teenagers who were having high glycemic index foods like refined carbohydrates, processed food, packaged items, and added sugars or sweetened yogurt, stuff like that that is higher on the glycemic index level, actually had higher levels of acne because it causes inflammation, especially in your skin cells, especially in your melanocytes, in your keratinocytes, and other cells of your skin. Now, because of the inflammation, many of the white blood cells end up entering into your skin and they start eating the dead cells, and there is these pustules that form on the skin, and they're filled with pus and give that really worse acne sort of appearance to the face. If you want to reduce the chances of acne, reduce your levels of added sugar in your diet. Number four is really obvious, and that is it actually increases your risk of type 2 diabetes. Risk of type 2 diabetes actually comes from greater belly weight, especially fat in your viscera, hypertension, insulin resistance, and a consumption of high sugary or high saturated fatty diet. Because obesity is such a strong factor for type 2 diabetes, countries that have been consuming a lot of sugar, like Mexico, like Saudi Arabia, countries in the Gulf, especially in Latin America, have been consuming really high amount of added sugar, especially in their drinks. Many of the soda brands are so big in Mexico and many other countries. Mexicans are now having type 2 diabetes on a much higher scale than they used to before. They're eating these processed foods as a cheap source, or many of these are being added to snacks for kids. Number 5 is that sugar consumption actually increases your risk for cancer. Because tumors, they crave sugar. They crave sugar like kids do. So in a PET scan, what they actually do is they give you a sample of radioactive glucose and they measure the glucose uptake in your body. And cells that show the greatest uptake of glucose are actually cells that may have a susceptible source of tumor. They found out this because tumors relative to the body cells consumed a lot of glucose, and well, on the other hand, the cells of the body would be consuming ketones or medium chain or long chain fatty acids. This is why if you eat food that is low in fiber and high in added sugar, you would actually be giving fuel to the fire that is actually turning the tumor into permanent cancer cells, or even metastasizing those cancer cells to other parts of your body. A study of over 430,000 people that was done showed that people who consumed less amount of added sugar actually had less chances of developing esophageal cancer, colorectal cancer, endometrial cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer, and many other cancers. Number 6 is sugar actually increases the aging process. It fastens the aging process, and that is because of these compounds called AGEs, or advanced glycosylation end products. These are compounds that form a link between the protein and the carbohydrate part component of your body, and due to this, the collagen and the elastin in your skin actually loosens up. You would have saggy face features and cellulite deposits in part of your skin, especially your hips and other parts where you have a lot of fat deposition. These advanced glycosylation products also increase inflammation in your body. So if you eat a lot of sugar, you would have a lot of AGEs in your body that would actually accelerate the aging process. Similar thing happens in smokers and those who consume a lot of processed food. Because these processed food actually have a lot of trans fatty acids, and upon cooking, these trans fatty acids have shown to have advanced glycosylation products. And because they have these advanced glycosylation products, they actually increase your aging process. If you want to stop aging, or you want to slow down your aging process prematurely, you should actually decrease your intake of processed food, canned foods, added sugars. You should increase your fiber uptake. You should increase your water intake. These things would actually slow down your aging process. The last thing on the list is that sugar consumption actually drains your energy. You might have heard of the terms sugar rush or sugar crash. These terms are really true when it comes to nutrition, because once you consume a lot of sugar, you feel like you have a superpower. Your brain starts working really well. You start memorizing things really well. But then once that period of about 60 to 80 minutes comes to an end, you actually go through the sugar crash. Your memory declines, your cognition comes to a halt. Many of the cellular processes that are happening slow down, so your metabolism slows down. You actually get hunger pangs, where you actually feel like something is pushing on your stomach, or like your stomach is caving inside. These hunger pangs are due to the sugar crash that is happening. Some people might even feel sleepy or dizzy in worst case scenarios. And many people, they actually come to the clinic where they are not yet diagnosed with diabetes, and they had a sugar crash and they fainted, they fell to the ground, they had a fall. And when we found out that their blood sugar levels were about 40 milligrams per deciliter, and if they had a meal, they would go up to about 220 or even 250 milligrams per deciliter. So they are diagnosed with diabetes. If you like the video, consider dropping down a thumbs up, consider subscribing to the channel, and commenting down below if you have any queries at all.